Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Scott Macbeth with Oracle Utilities, and I'm here today with Mr. Brad Williams, Vice President of Industry Strategy for Oracle Utilities. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Scott. Glad to be here today and have a great conversation about some of the exciting things we're working on.
Well, let's jump right into that conversation. So one of the things we hear in the utility industry today a lot is about the edge of the grid. So let's start off with you talking about exactly what people mean by the edge of the grid.
Yeah, sure. And you can think of your own home and your neighbors around you. And that's really what we're talking about when we say the edge of the grid, is that we are, utilities are connecting to your home. And why this is important is because your home is becoming not just a consumer of the electricity or energy or water, but it actually is becoming a prosumer, or actually producing electricity in some cases. If you have photovoltaics or you have an electric vehicle, you can feed back into the grid. So that's the edge of the grid.
So when we talk about it being the edge, why is it the edge? Where is the grid stop or begin?
Yeah, so that's a good point. If you look at traditional utilities, particularly the transmission distribution aspect of utilities, for the past 100 years, utilities have produced power centrally through central power plants and then transmit over high voltage transmission lines and then distribute in medium and low voltage distribution facilities. And so when you talk about the edge of the grid, that's where it ends. That's the very edge of the distribution network. And why this is important is like what we were talking about, is this is where a lot of the activity is now around smart grids, around smart buildings, smart cities, those types of things.
Okay, so when we have all this technology out there, how are utilities controlling it? What do they use to control all of that?
So traditionally, utilities have had a traditional SCADA system, and SCADA was designed for that single flow of electricity from the central power plants through the transmission lines down to the substations, and they had monitoring and control, remote monitoring and control of those facilities from end to end, and they typically stopped at the substation. And so that left the edge of the grid to have less visibility to the network operators. And so this is becoming an issue because to control and optimize the edge of the grid, it really requires us to have that visibility, that model, all the way down to the consumer level.
Okay, so now that they're down to that consumer level, what technologies are the consumers using that's affecting the grid operations?
Yeah, so the big one you'll see, depending on what region you're in, I think is photovoltaics, which is rooftop photocells, solar cells that are being designed into homes these days or being retrofit in many areas. You see it here in California, in Europe, in the Southwest where they have lots of sun, Hawaii and other places, very prevalent growth of rooftop photovoltaics. So that's just one. Electric vehicles would be another one. Being able to plug in electric vehicle has a high demand during the charge period, but also has the capability of potentially charging back into the grid, feeding back into the grid to support the grid during constraints. And then other things like building energy management systems. A lot of large buildings come with these smart controllers to manage the energy, and utilities can have some visibility into that for major demand response events, peak pricing periods, those types of things. Even homes today have home area networks where they may have a Wi-Fi capability within your home where you can control devices. I know my TV and video equipment have those types of capabilities where I can use my iPhone to control that. So I think that they're becoming more prevalent in homes to have these smart devices, and it's now to a point where utilities need to have some capability to manage and model these smart devices.
So what exactly do they have to do to get to that level where they can take advantage of all these technologies and get the best performance out of the grid?
Yeah, so I think it starts with a model. It's like we have to be able to extend the model to this edge of the grid like we're talking about. And traditionally, utilities have stopped at the substation or maybe some of the distribution feeders beyond that, but typically don't go all the way to the customer. And I think that's the challenge with the traditional approaches, is being able to have a robust model that can take the actual energy technology that consumers have and be able to model it and then be able to provide real-time interaction to these technologies in order to actually optimize the technologies with the grid. And so they become a part of the grid, the edge of the grid, and these consumer energy technologies actually become a part of the grid to be managed. And so that's really the challenge utilities have today, is how do we take this exponential growth of devices and information and provide a more complex model to optimize that. And that's what Oracle does best. That's what we are bringing to the table, is those capabilities around information management and model management, and we're applying that to these smart grid technologies.
So if I'm a utility and I've traditionally been controlling my grid with a SCADA system, what do I do differently now that I have something better to use?
Yeah, so I think we need to realize that SCADA doesn't go away. It still plays a role on the transmission down to the substation level typically, and we're not saying that goes away. That we are complementing that with the direct interaction with these smart devices and these other new sensors and the other growth of devices that are coming into play. And then we integrate to the traditional SCADA systems to provide the full picture and give you a complete model. So SCADA feeds our model, and these other devices can feed our model as direct real-time interaction with the edge of the grid and the rest of the grid.
So with this much more complex model, we've got a lot more data coming in. It's kind of a different way of operating for utilities, but it's not new to other industries. What have other industries done, and how have they dealt with this?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of activity, and I would actually say these other industries are ahead of utilities by a lot of respects. You can think of financial, healthcare, manufacturing, telecoms. All of those areas have actually done a lot at the edge of the grid as far as management of these devices. The financial, the growth of these ATMs and even smartphone type applications, healthcare, the monitoring of all the sensors and so forth in hospitals and other places, manufacturing, the growth of sensors in the actual processes, and telecoms as well. As we see lots of telecommunication devices out in the field that are enhancing mobile phone communications, for example, and those types of things. And so that's what Oracle Utilities Network Management System has done, is taken what we have done in other industries and applied those same capabilities around complex model management and exponential growth of real-time information to help optimize the way utilities operate. And so we've been able to demonstrate that with a number of large utilities worldwide, and been very successful with that in the Southwest, where they have these high penetrations of renewables. We've done that in the Northeast, where there's a lot of policy changes around how we're able to support this edge of the grid transactions.
It's really a new world for utilities, and they have a lot of technology choices to make. So I appreciate you being here today. Thank you for joining us.